Hey guys, Reuben Williams here, founder of SportsGrad. Over the last 5 or so years, I've helped people land more than 780 roles in the sports industry. And in the last couple of years in particular, have worked with a lot of more mature people and young professionals between, say, 25 to 35, make a career change into the sports industry so they can actually use their skill set, but do it in an industry that they love and feel like they're making an impact. And so if you're thinking about making a career change into sport, stick around because what I'm going to share with you in this video is the reality of what it takes to make a career change into sport. Because the problem is not that you are not skilled enough or that you are not knowledgeable enough. There is a whole lot of other things going on underneath the surface that you can control and you can fix that will be ultimately the difference between whether you carry on working in a job that you loathe and you struggle to get out of bed in the morning to go and do each day, or one that you are bouncing out of bed every day because you absolutely love what you do, and perhaps that is in sport. So what I've noticed over my 10 years in the sports industry and 5 years coaching people on how to land jobs in sport is that there are two types of people. You've got your industry-ready people and you've got your industry-wanted people. Now, the industry-ready people are the ones who know what they're doing, they've got the skill set, they've got the degree, they're very capable, but they're completely invisible to the industry. And they just expect that, because I've worked 5 or 6 years in one job and because I've got a resume that's pretty tidy and because I've got an undergrad degree, maybe even a master's degree, that someone should just recognize all of that in me and give them a job. The reality is that is not the case. And that is because the sports industry is so highly in demand that you need to be more than industry ready. What you need to be instead is industry wanted. Because when you are industry wanted, people know your name, they go directly to you, they look at your resume and they think, yep, let's fast track them straight through to the interview stages. They present as a problem solver, they've got a strong online presence, and they get hired again and again and again and again. Now, the reason why I coach people on how to land a job in sport and have been able to help people fill 780 roles is because first, I did it for myself. And so I spent 5 years making all the mistakes, fumbling around, going upwards, backwards, sideways to figure out how to get a job in sport so that you don't have to go through the same sort of stress. The result for me was that on the Monday after my final exam, so one day of space, I landed my dream job in the commercial team at Cricket Australia. And it was an absolute dream come true. I was on the field of the MCG on Boxing Day during an Ashes series, and it absolutely changed my life for the better. And so that's why I love helping other people land their dream job in sport, because I know how good it feels to be doing something you absolutely love. Now, if you want the full story about how I made that dream come true, go and listen to episode 309 of the SportsGrad podcast. All right, so now I'm going to get into a whole bunch of hard truths that you need to know about the sports industry. They're going to help you with your job hunt going forward, so it's not a months or even years long process to break into a job that you love. So the first thing you need to understand is that there is a supply and demand issue with candidates entering the sports industry. The issue is that there is a very small number of jobs and a very large number of people who want those jobs. If you think about how many people are passionate about sport and would love to work in sport, that's basically who you're up against. But when you think about the size of the industry compared to other industries like manufacturing or hospitality and whatnot, they are huge industries that employ large amounts of people, but not everyone is super passionate, about roads or about fast-moving consumer goods. Whereas what they do want to do is work in sport. So you've just got a large amount of people trying to fit into a very small hole. And so that is basically what you're up against. And what it means is that jobs in sport often have 500 plus applicants per role, which leads to recruiters not even going to the open job market, not even going to the job boards, and instead just going to their network and who they know, because it's much, much easier. In fact, I was talking to a people and culture manager at a sports marketing agency in Melbourne recently, and they said that they put a job ad up online for an analyst role. They got over 200 applicants for it, and then they said we had to take the job down because we couldn't deal with the amount of interest in the job. That is a reality of the sports industry. There are just so many people trying to apply for jobs. Recruiters don't like to deal with the work with it, so they find the easiest path to finding the best person. Now, one of the reasons that the sports industry looks to their network and is looking to make the recruitment process as easy as possible for them is because, in the words of the executive general manager of people and culture from Cricket Australia, she says that recruitment is risky because you never know who you might be bringing into your organization. And once they're under the hood, who knows what could go wrong. If you get the wrong person and they are a bad fit for the team, It can slow the entire project down. It can put other people off to the point where they leave. And then trying to rehire that person can also take another couple of months. And you can end up on a treadmill for 6 months to a year just by making the wrong hire, let alone, all the people and culture issues that might come if you get someone dodgy. So recruitment is risky, and that is why it is inherently built on trust. And so what people and culture teams do is start thinking about who do they trust immediately that they can get into their organization. Then they go to their network if they don't know anyone immediately. Then after that, they do a LinkedIn recruiter search to see who they might be able to find. And then as a last place resort, then they go to the job boards. The problem with this is that most job hunters go in the opposite direction. They think, let's go to the job boards. That's where all the jobs in sport are. But that is where, the last resort jobs end up. And then what most job hunters do is they go, then I'll try and connect with the hiring manager, and then I'll try and reach out to the HR team. And then they're like, maybe I'll put a post up on LinkedIn to try and get more awareness. And so you end up going the opposite direction to the way that recruiters in sport are actually trying to hire you. So one very important detail that you need to understand is that whether you like it or not, you are part of every organization's talent funnel. So the talent funnel works like this. At the very top of the funnel, you've got the people that an organization is aware of on paper. In the middle of the funnel, getting closer to the bottom, you've got the people that the organization is aware of online. So if you post on LinkedIn, we now know about you there. And then at the bottom of the funnel, you've got the people who the organization is aware of in person. And so what you want to do is try and make sure you can get to the bottom of the funnel as quickly as possible. That is your goal. And where most people stay stuck is they remain at the top of the funnel as part of the paper people because they think that their resume is enough. And they're too scared to put themselves out on LinkedIn, so they never progress closer to the goal. And they're too scared to network, so they never get closer than that. Or they don't know the right way to go about it, so they never get responses to their messages. So the goal of a job hunter is to get from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel. And there are so many tactics that you're probably not using right now that you can take advantage of to get there quicker. So what I've just mentioned then are the 3 ways you can get yourself out there and get awareness of who you are. That is on paper, in person, and online. And what you want to do is kind of use all 3 because you don't want to just rely on one, but you want to think about how you are using your job hunting time during the week effectively, because you can use it in a very inefficient way if you focus on the wrong thing. So say, for example, you could use 2 hours of your time to write one job application. And if it lands on the desk of an HR manager who's dealing with, 500 plus applications, then they might literally pick it up for 5 to 10 seconds and think, nah, not a fit, and discard it. So Dan Simons, who is now the head of people and community at the Victorian Institute of Sport, back when he was in a similar role at Golf Australia, he said to me, you've got 5 to 10 seconds to catch my attention or you're basically getting discarded. So if you think about all the work that you've done over 2 hours to prepare a perfect cover letter and resume just to be seen by one person for 5 to 10 seconds, it's pretty unfair. But that is the nature of the sports industry. So then the next level down, when you think about how you might be able to best spend 2 hours of your time, you might use that time to go on 2 coffee dates or go to one networking event for 2 hours. And with that time, you get the chance for people to actually meet you. You can introduce yourself, talk about who you are, and build a relationship with people. And now you're getting closer to the source, building up a greater awareness of who you are. So at the paper level, you've got 2 hours to influence one person. At the people level, you've got 2 hours to influence potentially 10 people at an event. Now, the most efficient use of those 2 hours is to broadcast yourself on LinkedIn because there is so much leverage for your time. You might spend 2 hours putting together one LinkedIn post and it can potentially be seen by 10,000 people, maybe even 100,000 people if you do it really, really well. And now you can actually get your resume out there at scale. And not only that, you can actually drip feed it over many, many weeks so you can keep that awareness of you high and keep a high amount of eyeballs on you and your profile. Now, the reality is that you have to do all 3 in a very considered way. But where most people go wrong is that they just only apply for jobs and they don't think about getting in front of people, and they certainly try to actively avoid putting themselves out there online. Now, the timeline of the industry ready people, God bless them, is like this. First, they might start by applying for 30 odd roles. They don't hear back from any of them and they're like, that really hurt. I just got rejected. What can I do next? Then, a month goes by and they're like, I think I need to message some people. And so now they're like putting themselves out there on LinkedIn. They might send the wrong message or they stress for a day about what to say. Most people never get a response. And then eventually maybe you might find one person who does. The people in sport are very busy. You might catch up with them 2 weeks later. It's taken you another month to get in front of one person. Then you meet one person, you try and remember everything that they say, you pray that they remember you as well, and you try and do it again. Another month goes by and you've now met 2 or 3 people in sport, and then you still haven't found a job because you're still plugging away with sending as many resumes and cover letters as you can. And then eventually you're like, oh, maybe I should post on LinkedIn. Like, that seems like a good idea to do. People who are getting jobs seem to do that. And then after, 3 or 4 months of job hunting with, anxiety kind of running through your veins, you like put up the old hashtag open to work with the green circle of death around your face. And now you just come across as a desperate job hunter. That is the story of the industry ready. What you want to do is actually flip that. And this is how the industry wanted to go about it. What they do is they start on LinkedIn. And they start posting content consistently, targeting their ideal boss by solving the problems that they have in their day-to-day life. They use that to not only generate awareness of themselves, but also build up a profile that people want to connect with. Then that helps their networking ability. And after they've done that for a few consistent weeks and have started to build up networks because now people actually want to meet with them because they've become someone who people want to meet, then when they continue posting online and their presence is still strong, then when it comes to applying for jobs, people pick up their resume and they go, oh my God, that's Julian Sardana. I've seen his presence on LinkedIn before. They don't really care about his resume. They just have seen the name and trust his content, and they're like, let's get him in here. And now Julian's walking in from a position of strength rather than from ground zero with all the other job hunters, because he's taken the time to build awareness of himself, build that reputation up that people trust, and now can get fast-tracked from a resume to an interview much quicker than having not done any content and not met anybody in the process beforehand. So that is the storyline of the industry wanted. Okay, so let's say you've made it to the bottom of the talent funnel and now you're hoping that someone hires you. Well, to make sure that you're not relying on luck, you actually need to understand what the sports industry bases their selection on. Now, what it comes down to is a combination of your current capability multiplied by your future potential. So your current capability includes things like your education, your skill set, your experience, all those things that you've got in yourself like right now that you can put to use. Whereas your potential is how good you could become in the future. So if you think about when professional sporting teams go to the draft to pick up young kids coming through, they're not picking them based on what they can do right now because they know that they're going to develop into a better player in the future. They're looking for their potential. Same thing comes into play in the professional world as well. And it doesn't really matter if you're 21 or 31 or even 41. Everyone wants to select people who are going to develop and grow into the role with that potential. So you need to actually make sure that you are signaling things that show your potential. So I discovered this when I was trying to break into Cricket Australia, and the 5 things that I landed on that indicated my potential were these. Number 1 was my leadership ability. Number 2 was my emotional intelligence. Number 3 was my initiative. Number 4 was my problem-solving ability. And number 5 was my previous results. And I thought if I can kind of lace that through my resume, through my cover letter, through my interview answers, by the way I talk about myself when I'm networking as well, then people will not only just look at me for what I had done, but also picture how good I could be in the future. The reason why that is important is because if you think about the dream hire for an organization, it's someone who stays in the role for 5, 6, 7 years, and over that time develops compounding knowledge and compounding relationships, whereby with every year that goes past, they just get better and better and better at the job, and they become the ultimate person for that. So they're trying to picture you as someone who can evolve into that every single year, but that is based on a very specific set of traits and characteristics, and they are the 5 indicators of potential. So if you can start signaling them through everything that you're doing, then you can actually start to get selected as opposed to just being judged based on what you've done in the past. Okay, so now that you actually know what's going on underneath the surface and what it takes to land a job in sport, how do we actually do it? Well, the first thing you need to think about is that you are a product that you're trying to get someone to buy. So you're trying to create a transaction involving yourself. And that might sound a bit glib, but stick with me. So if we think about the process to selling a house, you can think about the process to selling yourself. So let's say you buy a vacant block of land that you want to build a house on. You start by putting the floors down, you put the walls down, you put the roof on top, and now you've got a house sitting there on a street ready to sell. But it doesn't matter if you've got the best house on the best street in Melbourne. You need to go out and make sure people are aware that it is for sale. So first thing you might do is actually figure out, well, who might actually want to buy my house. And so you draw up a floor plan and you understand, okay, it's got 2 bedrooms, it's got 1 bathroom, therefore maybe like a young couple might want to move in, or maybe it's an apartment for a single person, or maybe it's a large family home for a family ready to move into. Based on what you've got to offer, then that helps you decide who could buy my house. So then what you've got to do is try and find as many of them as possible. So you might run an open inspection so people can come and check it out in person. You might put an ad in the newspaper so that people can look it up, or you might run Instagram ads to a website with the listing on it so that you can get it out to as many people as possible. But basically you want to get it out there on paper, in person, and online to as many people as you can. And then effectively through a combination of the correct positioning of the house and what's great about the house and who is it uniquely suited for, and through a combination of a large amount of awareness, that is how you get the best price for your house. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is because the same thing applies to your career. Because when you come out of uni, that is when you lay the floor down on your house. When you graduate, you put in the walls down, you put the roof on top, and now you're kind of like a ready product, ready for the market. But that's where most people stop. Most people think if I just keep building up my house, that someone will come along and buy it. When really those people are a house sitting in the middle of the forest that might be big, it might be grand, but nobody actually knows it exists. And so what you need to do is actually make sure that you get your house out there. And so one of the reasons why houses have real estate agents is because people don't want to think about selling their house. They just want someone to go and do it for them. Well, unfortunately, you need to be the real estate agent of your own career. So you need to be able to think about positioning yourself. You need to be thinking about how to run your own open inspection so you can get in front of people. You need to be thinking about how you can, broadcast yourself out there online as well, and on paper on top of that as well. And so through a combination of the right positioning of you and your house and understanding what you've got to offer, and by getting your name out there on paper, in person, and online in as many ways as possible to as many amount of people as you can, that is how you are going to get someone to buy you and you get hired into the sports industry. So one of the most effective ways that you can start to get your name out there and start to sell yourself so that you have a large amount of people who are aware of you and what you can do is by creating a connection vehicle. Because ultimately you want to be able to post about yourself regularly, and you also want to be able to meet a lot of people in the process. And so what a connection vehicle does is it gives you a reason to talk to people, it gives other people an important reason to talk to you, and it also gives you something to talk about online as well that you can post and share. So back when SportsGrad was a YouTube channel with just 30 subscribers, I reached out to Chris Niku, who was a director on the board of Football Australia at the time. And I said to him, hey, I'd love to interview you and ask about what it's like being a director on the board of a national sporting organisation. And I didn't think he would respond, but given that I gave him a reason and a purpose to connect through my podcast or YouTube channel at the time, that was enough for him to say, yep, I will give you your time. And so what ended up happening was I couldn't meet him in Melbourne or anywhere in Australia, but he said to me, I'll chat with you when I get back from the Russia World Cup. And I said, that's all right, Chris, I'm going to be in Russia too. And so we ended up meeting in Samara before the Socceroos played Denmark. And he took me around the Socceroos family and friends function afterwards, and we got to do this interview together. And then 4 years later at the Qatar FIFA World Cup, I messaged Chris again and said, hey, Chris, are you around? Let's do another interview. And he said, yep, let's do it. At this point, he was now chairman. He had some new things to talk about. One of the things that he talked about on the previous interview was Australia's bid for the FIFA Women's World Cup. That obviously was successful. So to be able to get an inside scoop into that was really cool for myself. But it all came from having a connection vehicle, which was SportsGrad. So you might want to start a connection vehicle for yourself. It could be a blog series. It could be a podcast. Could be anything that gives you a reason to chat with people. And what it does as well is it means you can actually create content regularly and put your name out there frequently so that you have a large amount of awareness of you and your profile at the same time. Now, another type of connection vehicle that you might want to create as well is what I call a DIY internship. Now, this involves creating a project for yourself that you can work on that gives you an excuse to meet certain people, but also put your skills into play as well. And if you are not working in sport at the moment in any capacity, so let's say you've got your full-time job Monday to Friday, that might be in banking or law or, marketing in another industry, whatever it is, what you want to do is find a way to meet people in sport by actually volunteering your time in a sporting environment. So to create a DIY internship for yourself, what you want to do is find somewhere that's got a low barrier to entry, which means, you don't need to go through a recruitment process to get hired into it. So a couple of good examples of places with low barriers to entry are, startups, they're pretty flexible. Grassroots clubs are extremely flexible. Charities are another one, and university societies as well. And so for me, when I was studying at university, the Deakin University Sports Society was my DIY internship as president of that organization. And it gave me the chance to kind of be creative with something and meet a whole lot of people in sport at the same time. But what you might want to do is create a DIY internship for yourself at, say, a local sporting body where you volunteer your time to say, hey, I'll run the recruitment marketing campaign for the next season of footy or the next season of cricket or netball or whatever your sport you want to get involved in, and showcase your skills in that space. Or maybe they don't have an event manager and you put your hand up to say, hey, I'll run all the events for you this year. Simon Roberts from World Rugby, who was previously the team manager of the Socceroos and the Wallabies, he got started at the Box Hill Hawks by doing exactly this 30 years ago. And what this does is it proves to people that you are willing to go the extra mile. So there's a whole lot of inherent initiative involved in this that is a great signal of your potential, as I mentioned before. But also it introduces you to a ready-made network in sport. So for example, if you wanted to go and pay $25,000 a year to join the Royal Melbourne Golf Club, you would tap into an amazing network. But if you don't want to pay that, you could go and volunteer at Paran Cricket Club and tap into a pretty good network of people there, like Shekhar Sridhar, longtime friend of SportsGrad, has exactly done, and offer your services there and meet all the people that walk through the doors of that cricket club. So go out and find a DIY internship in ideally a grassroots club or a startup that's just going where they could use extra hands, and offer your services as a way to meet people, as a way to demonstrate your skills, and as a way to demonstrate your initiative on top of that. And when you go into this, you don't just want to give up your time and run water for the sake of running water. What you want to do is actually work backwards from the interview answer that you want to give in the future. So say, for example, you went to your local football club, and what you want to think about is, what is the end result that I want to create after being in this space for a few months? So maybe it's in events, and you set yourself a goal of saying, I want to be able to say that I ran an event series at the football club this year that got over 500 total attendees and generated $20,000 in revenue, and be able to say that this was an increase of 40% from the previous year's events attendance and event revenue. And what that means is, when you get to that next interview and someone says, have you worked in sport? And you're like, well, I've actually volunteered in sport and I put myself out there. I took the initiative to approach the club myself. And not only did I do that, while I was there, I increased the overall results and revenue and event attendance by 40%, which meant the club had more money to invest into its teams, which has led us to have better on-field success. So you're contributing to the club in a really meaningful way. One of the reasons why that is so influential is because a lot of people who work in the sports industry started out this way. So they volunteered first and then they got their break. And so there's a lot of people who are, in their 30s, 40s, 50s who have come through this pathway who think, oh, well, because I had to volunteer first, anyone coming in now, they should have to do that as well, because that's just how I had to do it. And that might be right or wrong, but who cares? It gets recognized. And so if you want to get recognized, then go out there and put your name into grassroots sport. I think it was Adam Bishop, one of the general managers at Athletics Australia. He said to me that he would actively look for and recruit people with grassroots sporting experience because it demonstrated all those things that I just mentioned. But also, you're going to be extremely close to the core customer of sport. And having empathy for the core customer of sport is going to be one of the most important things that you can take into your new job. And so if you are around that all the time, you understand the needs of sporting participants and sporting families, then you're going to be able to do your job much, much better, no matter if you're in commercial, marketing, events, operations, you name it. Okay, now the last thing I want to talk about to give you an advantage to help you change careers into the sports industry is make sure that you know how to articulate why you want to work in sport. Because if you just say, I'm really passionate about sport, you fall into the bucket of literally billions of other people and you do the opposite of differentiating yourself, okay? You just come across as another sports loving fan that just wants to be around it. What you really need to do is actually articulate the moment that was meaningful to you, the impact that had on you, and how you want to tie your work that you currently do back to that moment. So you want to think about the impact point that sports organizations are trying to have. So for example, if you think about Cricket Australia this summer trying to make sure that they smash fan attendance. Well, what is actually the impact if they achieve their goal of, 1 million bums on seats during the summer? Well, in reality, it's not just ticket solds or people in the stands. What they want is, people in the stands with their mouth open going, oh my gosh, I can't believe the action that is unfolding in front of me. And based on that, they want to be able to like turn to their friends and family and, create these moments that they talk about for years and years to come. And so you want to go back and think about, okay, well, if that is like the impact Cricket Australia marketing team or events team is, or fan engagement team is trying to have, and why is that important to me? Well, it's probably important to you because when you were a kid at some point, you felt that for the first time. So what you want to do is like dig into your memories and go back to that earliest memory of, when sport became meaningful for you and what it felt like and how that inspired you to want to combine what you currently do in your current profession, no matter what your skill set is, and tie those things together. Because when you can tie your skill set to the impact point that you care about, then people will genuinely believe that you are here for the right reasons. So don't go into your next interview and don't write your next cover letter saying, I'm really passionate about sport. Make sure you can tell a story about why it's meaningful to you, and you'll cut through the noise of literally thousands of other job hunters just saying, I'm passionate. Awesome. Hopefully that's given you a few things to think about. I could go much, much longer. And in the SportsGrad Method program, we cover off on how to do all of that in great detail, plus a lot of other lessons and a lot of other things you need to understand to make sure that, your job hunt into sport is as effective as possible. We've had some incredible case studies come through the program. For example, there's a guy called Tom Blazic up in Brisbane who used to be working as a substitute teacher. He's 30 years old, had been trying to make a career change for a long, long time, joined the SportsGrad method, and now it works in athlete wellbeing. And he got out there, created a connection vehicle through his series. He connected with many people around the world, grew his awareness, and was walking into interviews with this aura around him because of the presence that he'd created. And now he's loving life, working full-time in the sports industry and in athlete wellbeing. Recently, from cohort 3, Sasha Brame said she only put up 5 posts using the headhunted system, which we teach people, which led to her getting headhunted into a broadcast operations role in sport, which was incredible to see. But even some little wins as well, like Andrew Hawkins, we taught him the headhunted system, which led him to putting up just one LinkedIn post, which attracted someone in journalism who had been a dream mentor for him for a long, long time, and also got Channel 7's head of Commonwealth Games and executive producer for their cricket coverage to reach out to him as well based on what he'd been putting out there too. And then finally, we've also had a couple of really great wins in Tia Schwalger and Dante McDonald land jobs at Cricket Australia extremely quickly. So at the start of the year, Cricket Australia came to me and said, hey, Reuben, we need a commercial partnerships coordinator yesterday. Who do you know? So I sent them a few names from the program, one of which was Dante McDonald. 16 days into joining the program, he gets hired into Cricket Australia, moves his life from Adelaide to Melbourne to come and work over here. But then he did such a good job, and during the year he was still engaged with the program and was still helping him grow his career and put his best foot forward, that he ended up getting a new job at Cricket Australia. So you got a bit of an internal promotion and moved across departments into the customer experience team to do some research on the ground to understand what fans and participants actually want from Cricket Australia, which opened a door in the commercial partnerships team again. And so Cricket Australia came back to me and they said, hey, we need another Dante. He was fantastic. Who have you got? I said, well, I haven't got another Dante, but I've got a Tia. And so now Tia has done a similar thing and moved her life down from the Gold Coast to Melbourne, living in Richmond and working in Jolimont at Cricket Australia and loving life working in sport. And so that's what we're able to do through the SportsGrad Method program, through the network that we've already been building up over the last 10 years. That is, just growing exponentially at the moment right around the world. We can loop you straight into employers. We can also show you the methods at work to get noticed very, very quickly. So if you're interested in that, I'd encourage you to apply for the SportsGrad Method program. Otherwise, go back and listen to this on repeat because there's a lot of good stuff in here that is going to be important for your next job hunt. That's all for now. All the best, and we'll get you out of whatever job that is and into a job you love soon enough.